Okay, just a little demo. We're still practicing composition, basic design principles. So I'm going to make a new Illustrator file, and I'm going to tell it that I want it to be 1080 pixels by 1080 pixels, and I want one artboard. Okay, and here's my artboard. Now the first thing that I would want to do is I want to bring in an image. Because it's kind of hard to compose without images. If we think about posters, postcards, all sorts of things, social media graphics, we typically have a photograph. So I've already downloaded this and I'm going to just drag it into Illustrator and it will appear on my artboard. I'm going to center it and I'm going to go ahead and lock that layer. That's going to be just my base layer. Everything's going to go on top of it. And I'm going to go ahead and draw some rule of thirds lines just to kind of help me out. So I'm going to go view, rulers, show rulers. And I'm not going to be too picky about this. I'm just going to say that looks like about a third. That looks like about a third. And that looks like about a third and about a third. So I'm not being picky. Great. I'm going to lock that layer and I'm going to make a new one. So for this assignment, what we are doing is working with one word, some kind of, something like an emotion word. And I looked at this and I thought that a word that might be fun to play with is boring, B-O-R-I-N-G. And I'm gonna go ahead and set that in Helvetica because it's nice and simple, and I'm gonna make it a little bit bigger. I don't want to do anything on this one with like a really huge word. I kind of like the idea that the word's going to be small. And I'm going to go ahead and set it on one of my rule of third points just to start me off. And I could set it there. I think I actually kind of like it down here. I like the idea of drawing the eye from the upper left to the lower right in this composition. So I'm going to set it there and start and see how that goes. I'm also going to go ahead and now that I've placed it, those guides are kind of bothering me. So I'm going to come down to guides and hide guides. I can turn them on and off at any point by hitting Apple semicolon. So it's useful when they're there, it's useful when they're not there. So now my idea is I want to draw the eye down to boring, and I'm just going to do that with some simple shapes. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll say this is my text layer. I just double click to name it, and I'm going to go ahead and make a layer for shapes. I just like to keep my stuff on different layers so it's a little bit easier to keep track of. And I'm going to do this with circles. So I'm turning my rules of third back on, and I'm just going to put a kind of small circle on this rule of thirds point. I'm not going to be too exact, but that's nice. And now I think I actually want it to be a little bit smaller. I want this composition to be really kind of subtle, right? I don't want to scream. I just want to kind of gently take the eye to boring. So I'm there, and then I think what I'm going to do is copy this and paste it and align it with boring. Okay, so these are lined up, it's lined up with boring, and now I'm going to hide my guide so I can kind of think a little bit. And what I think I want to do is kind of make this shape that goes in this direction heading towards boring, and I'm going to make it with circles because I can make the circles really kind of subtle. And you'll see that it's helping me line these things up so that they're vertically aligned and they're spaced well. And then I'm just going to go ahead and keep doing that until I get a group of 9. So I kind of have a shape going. You'll see I'm using Illustrator's guides to help me align everything. If I hold down Shift as I drag, that will help me control, like it locks it to horizontal or vertical so that you're dragging in a straight line, but I can see that's aligned. And now I'm thinking I could either do something like this, where boring is the next part of this kind of grid that I'm making, right? Like that. And that might work. I could draw my eye that way. But I think I want some more circles. So I'm just going to copy these and paste these 3. And now I'm going to bring them here so they're aligned in that direction. And I want them spaced properly. So I'm going to grab all of them and try to get them, there we go. So that's a nice grid. And now I'm going to bring my word back and space it that way. Okay, so now I'm going to kind of pause and think, okay, how am I doing? I've got some elements. I have kind of a sense of rhythm. I'm drawing the eye into the middle of the page where I have these light values, but I still need to kind of take it over to this word boring. So the way I'm going to do that, I think, is I'm going to start playing with color. And like I said, I want this to be a really kind of subtle composition. So I'm going to pull a dark blue out of these cliffs and use that for one of my dark colors. So these are, I'm getting like a little bit more harmony here. Everything's getting kind of monochromatic and nice. And now I'm going to select these and I'm going to make them that same blue color, but I think I'm going to go ahead and fade these out some. So I'm going to take the opacity down, just kind of watching where they go. And I might play with this, like maybe I want to choose overlay here. I can see what that does for me. I like a little bit more. I could play around. Just looking for what I want. I think what I want is actually multiply because I want them to still be dark. I want kind of a medium gray here. And then, okay, I like that. And I can see how it's kind of drawing my eye to these outer ones. So I want to make this one even farther away. So I'm going to pick up, and you'll see when I use my eyedropper tool, I get the color and the transparency. So I can just keep fading this guy out. And let's bring it way down. Okay, so you can see now my eye is kind of coming over to these and coming down to boring, and I like that, okay, because I have more contrast here, I have more contrast here. And then I'm kind of curious even about bringing another circle in. So if I copy this one, let's see what happens if I align it right there, and then I want to align it there, so that my eye is even kind of given another clue that it needs to drop down. And now if I think about my balance, right, it's feeling a little bit bottom heavy to me, like it might kind of fall over. So I'm just gonna pick everything up and move it and play with, where does that get me? And like, is it fun to have that circle on the horizon line? Maybe. Okay, so I'm kind of getting to a place where I like this. I think that I want boring to be aligned like this so that it kind of sticks in with these guys. I'm gonna leave it there for now. And I think what I want is actually even a little bit less contrast up here, so that it more leads the eye down. So I'm gonna select these guys and just take them into maybe a little bit lighter. Yeah, I like that. So I'm gonna make these all that lighter color. Okay, and just again thinking, okay, so I get more contrast, more contrast. I get this guy, I think I actually want this guy to have even more contrast, so that creates like an interesting little piece of space there, almost like a negative space. And then I wonder what happens if this is, can we get anything interesting here? Like what happens with this? Do I like that? I don't. But do I like maybe this? I like that quite a bit more. And I want to just bring it down because that's not making me too happy. Okay, so I like this. I could play with it more, but again, my only goal here is to draw attention to the word, make this word the focal point. And I'm doing that in a couple ways, right? I'm using line to lead the eye down, right? I have a line right here going down. I'm using contrast where I have less contrast and then I have more contrast leading my eye to that word. I'm doing a little bit of interesting things with shapes here. And, you know, I could certainly make this louder, right? I could make boring a really loud color if I really want to draw attention to it. And maybe I want to do that, right? Like that might actually be a good thing to do. So now there's a lot of contrast on that word. You know, I could think about whether this dot is that color. There's a lot of different ways that you can do this based on just kind of the feel you're going for, right? But I'm going for a really chill, kind of low contrast feel, but still being really careful about how I move the user's eye down to the word, thinking about how I don't have to use scale to draw attention, right? But scale's a different way that I could draw attention. If I was going to talk about this in a written paper, I would talk about contrast, right? I would talk about how the contrast here pulls my eye down. I would talk about line. I have a really clear vertical line here. I have these darker dots creating kind of some movement down to here. I could talk about negative space, where I have this space kind of in this area that is not used. I can talk about balance, where the top half, there's visual interest here, and it's leading down to the word, which kind of holds some weight on its own. And I could also talk about harmony, where, I'm pulling these colors out of the image. Everything is kind of living in this same world. And that's all we're doing with this, thinking about basic design principles and how I draw the eye to where I want it to be.